All right, let's try this again.
Okay.
All right, 3, 2, 1, rolling.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boy.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast. My guest today is Karri Lauritzen. She's a longtime friend of mine. She's a model. You would have seen her on displays and products in stores like Costco, Target, and you would also seen her walking on the runway. What most people don't know is that she grew up in the foster care system. She moved around a total of 29 times in her childhood. And even before entering foster homes, her and her several siblings were neglected and abused by their biological parents and just lived in horrible, horrible conditions. So here is Karri to share her life story, how she got through it all, how despite all the odds, she was able to become a model and work in that challenging industry, and just her general outlook on life. I'm here with my good friend, Karri Lauritzen. She is a professional model, a twin, and she also has an amazing story growing up in the foster care system and now mentoring and speaking on behalf of and to kids in the foster care system, helping to inspire them. So Karri has done a lot of work, but most people just looking at what she's done and like just meeting her, she's like one of the most fun person that I've ever known. Like totally stands out, even without the big fro that she has on right now. If you're tuning in on YouTube, you'll see her big fro.
When I take it down, it's like
yeah, like what'd you guys dress up as? Like thing 1 and thing 2?
yes, many years. Yeah, we could legitimately pull it off.
Yeah, you guys look exactly like
We even went to the extremes of painting our hair blue or using the color hairspray so that we can make it look even more like thing 1 and thing 2.
Really? Because you guys have the whole body physique, like you're tall and thin, and right? That's kind of what they look like. So why don't you kind of share with us what you talk about when you go speak to some of these kids in foster care systems, and kind of how you introduce yourself?
All right. Well, first I want to take this time to just thank you for the opportunity of just being here, being invited to speak and share my story. I love sharing this story because I feel like it can influence so many other people out there, whether you're in foster care, whether you're out of foster care, maybe you emancipated recently, maybe you're a foster parent, maybe your children are in the foster care system, maybe you have some sort of influence in that world or industry. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. And generally, I go speak at either foster care conventions, or I'll go speak at county events, or just events that I'm invited to that are nonprofit organizations, or just anywhere that people feel like my message and my story will be helpful if heard by youth out there. And so today I'm going to share the story of my upbringing and how I went from, because basically when people look at me, they don't assume my circumstances. They don't really, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't act like somebody who's been through
stereotypical traumatized foster kid. Or
well, when I first heard just a couple of the things that you and your twin, and I know several of your siblings, right? And just what you guys went through, like I wouldn't have imagined like meeting any of you that you guys have been through anything abnormal at all.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So if it's all right, I'll just start from what my childhood was like before I went in the foster care system.
Yeah.
All right. So I grew up in a small town in the Inland Empire called Riverside. It's next to San Bernardino. Most people know San Bernardino as the city on the news that had the recent shootings or the bombings. And I was in the city next to it, so it was pretty good. But I grew up in a home with 5 children. There was my 2 parents. My mom was she had smaller jobs. She always worked at like KFC or Church's Chicken, just did small hourly jobs to sort of take care of the family. My dad was always on disability, and his disability wasn't because he was physically or mentally disabled. It was just because his mom put him on it when he was younger, and he just got to keep it after he aged out, after he turned 18. And she made him wear a helmet, and he just went through a lot of psychological trauma in his own upbringing. And so, but he was just so used to it. So he never worked in our family. It was always my mom doing the working. And most of my upbringing, from the time I was born to the time I was about 10, 11 years old, myself and my siblings, we all lived in very either small apartment homes, or else we would rent a home inside of someone else's house. We would rent a room inside of someone else's home, or else we would live in like a small trailer home. And so growing up in that environment, it was a bit stressful because my mom was the one who worked, and she would come home, and my dad drank a lot, and he did drugs, and he was involved in a lot of gangs, and it wasn't the typical family setting. Like my siblings and I, we generally just took care of each other. We took care of the house. We took care of our dad. My mom just brought home the food when she could, and my dad's disability check paid for the rent, usually, when he didn't spend it on other things like alcohol. But we witnessed a lot of domestic violence in our home between our parents, and a lot of yelling, fighting, and by the time I was 11 years old, my mom had told me that our dad had been arrested over 60 times, which is insane. Yeah, I just found that out recently. But
That's
yeah,
like once a month.
Yeah, like for your whole
something.
life. It was pretty intense. But I do remember him being in and out of jail, and I remember visiting him in jail a lot, but I didn't realize it was that bad. But I know the neighbors would call the cops on him regularly, and we're like, "Oh, hey, Dad, your friends are here." But yeah, and I don't mean to take light of the situation, but that's sort of what got me through it. So I learned to develop a sense of humor and focus on the things I could control versus the things that I couldn't control. That's what I mean by that. So anyways,
Yeah, that's something I realized, that like the people who are able to get through certain things, or like a lot of comedians, I guess, and different people can kind of see the bright side of any situation, or at least kind of joke about it, because otherwise it's too hard
it's draining.
right?
Yeah. He wants to sit in a corner and like focus on, oh, woe is me, I had such a rough life, I'm just gonna go and be a rapper and make the words rhyme, and I just
Well, if you can make money doing that, why not?
Yeah, some of them do. But now I'm just like, no excuse. We all had hard upbringings. But anyways,
That's part of the reason why I want to just have you kind of talk about it in your way, kind of like people can kind of see your goofy smile.
my personality. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
All right, thank you. All right, so let me give you an idea of the ages of my siblings when we were growing up in these circumstances. So I am the second. Okay, there's a debate about this. I have an identical twin sister, and we've basically been arguing about who was born first since we were born, because we don't know. The doctors don't know. They can't tell us apart. How would they know? Our parents have never been able to tell us apart. How would they know?
And there were no iPhones back then.
Yep. So the way that my parents told us apart when we were born was one of us had a scratch on our nose one day, and the other one had a bracelet. So that's how they told us apart. But then one day the scratch was gone and the bracelet were gone. So they just they started using nail polish on our toes. And then my sister got bit by a spider when she was born. So she had a spider bite scar on her back. And so whenever anyone needed to figure out which one it was, they would just lift up the back of both of our shirts and like, oh, that one's Corey and this one's Karri. And so.
But that still doesn't answer who's older.
Oh, yeah. We don't know. We still argue about it to this day. And here's the reason. Okay, so when my sister and I were younger, we switched names. And this is where it gets a little more complicated. So, oh, sorry, microphone. Okay, This is where it gets a little more complicated. So we switched names when we were younger, and no one ever noticed. And so I felt like I looked more like a Karri and she looked more like a Corey, and our parents couldn't tell us apart anyway, so we switched names. And so since then, I've been known as Karri and she's been going by Corey, which is kind of funny because technically the birth certificate of the one named Corey is the one that was born first, according to the doctors. But here's the thing, we've been mixed up. She's had the spider bite and we switched names, so we didn't really know. So but
Interesting.
we assume that she was born first. This is the assumption, which we've been letting slide for almost 30 years. So, but to this day, we still have no idea.
And so you have one older sister.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm like, squirrel, got sidetracked there. So, yeah, I have one older sister. And, okay, right now there's 19 of us, and I'll get into why that is later.
yeah, that's
19 siblings.
That's another crazy story.
So, but at the time when we were growing up with our biological parents, there was one older sister. She's 11 months older than my twin sister and I. And then there's my twin and I. So that's the first three. And then we have our younger sister, Michelle. She's about 3 years younger than me. And then we have Tashina. She is about 2 years younger than Michelle. And then we have our little brother, Quentin. And he just turned 18. No, he just turned 19. Sorry, Quentin, if you're out there listening to this. I promise I didn't remember. I promise I didn't forget your birthday. Okay. So there was about 6 of us at the time when we were growing up together in these circumstances. But my younger sister, Michelle, she ended up getting adopted by one of our relatives when she was younger. So she was out of the picture for a lot of her upbringing. But so there was mainly 5 of us who were at home at the time. There were the 4 girls and our little brother. And my little brother, when I was 11 years old, my little brother was almost 1. He was a baby. And my older sister was 12. My twin was the same age as me. And our sister Tashina was 4, about to turn 5 at the time. And this was right around the year 2000. My mom, she was just basically tired of all of the abuse that she was going through and my dad being in and out of jail. She was tired of her own circumstances. So she wanted to look for a job that would not only allow her to get out of that environment, to get out of our home, but would also allow her to sort of help contribute to our family more. Yeah. And so she got a job as a truck driver driving the 18-wheelers. It was supposed to be just around the state, but then she ended up accepting a position that allowed her to drive around the country. And so
does that make more money, or is it just it's harder, right?
Yeah, it's a lot harder. We realized she would be gone a lot more. And so my dad was kind of upset about it because he's like, who's going to take care of the kids? And she's like, you are, you just stay there with them. But my dad, he's always in and out, so it wasn't really an option for him. But she ended up leaving us when we were 11. When I say we, I'm generally referring to my twin sister and I, because I'm used to telling the story from our perspective. But yeah, my mom left our family when we were 11, and just to go off and become the truck driver. And she said she wanted to do it so she could make more money, but we all really knew why she wanted to get out of her abusive relationship. She said she would come back and visit every weekend, and then she said she would come back and visit every month, and then she just stopped coming back. But during this time, we were left at home with our dad and went through a lot of crazy, all different types of abuse, starvation, and my dad had his friends, these strange people come over and in the middle of the night, and it was, needless to say, very scary.
Was this when you said your older sister had to cook and beg for different food for you guys, or was that before?
This was during that time. We had a baby that we were taking care of, our little baby brother. He was about 1 year old. And we didn't know how to take care of a baby. We're just thinking, okay, on TV, babies need milk. And so my older sister, she would go to all of our neighbors' home. We lived in a little trailer park and had a teeny tiny trailer that we all lived in. But she would go to the neighbors' homes and she would ask them if she can clean up their entire house for $5. And then she would take that money, go to the store and buy a gallon of milk. And that's what we fed our little brother. And she would get him diapers when she could. But it was just milk and diapers and no food or anything. And we didn't have food in our house. Our dad would typically just leave. He would be gone for weeks at a time. And then he would always come back either drunk or beat up. He would go in his room, close the door, and just pass out. And we wouldn't see him. When we did see him, he was leaving again. And so, but he was gone a lot. And
that's ridiculous that your brother Quentin, he's He looks
Yeah.
totally normal now.
Yeah.
He
He's
made it
fine.
through,
He's doing good. Yeah. And so, during this time also, let's see, there's so much I could talk about. It was scary. It was scary being there, like just having to rely on ourselves, take care of ourselves. We didn't have any food in the house except for it was about a 20-pound bag of white rice. And that white rice is what we ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day.
Did you
All
cook
of us.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. For breakfast, we'd eat rice we had sugar. So we put sugar inside of it. And then for lunch, we just ate it plain. And then for dinner, we'd put salt and pepper inside of it. And so that's what all of us ate during this time. And then our brother would give him milk.
I've had to do that too, because of my food allergies, like just trying different things. I've survived for quite a while on just white rice with sugar and salt, and just change it up.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know
So
what
you
you're
get
talking
it.
about.
You get it. Surprisingly, though, okay, most people, if they're forced to eat something for so long, they hate it. But I still love it. I'll still eat rice with sugar in it.
Yeah.
And people think it's weird, but I'm like, okay.
It tastes good. Why not?
Yeah. It's probably unhealthy, but it's good, right? Okay. Anyways, so one day when my twin sister and I were 11, so this is right around the same time, just a few months later, my dad just decided randomly that he didn't want kids anymore. He couldn't take care of us. And so he brought myself and my twin sister and my younger sister, he brought us all to a grocery store. And he ended up giving us away to a random stranger, someone we didn't know, he had just met that moment. He gave us away and he told us, "This is your new mom. Like, I can't take care of you. I don't want you anymore. Just go with her. She's going to be your new mom."
So crazy.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who's ever done that before, but I guess in our day it's a little more common, but they call it like trafficking. But luckily, we weren't required to do anything of that sort. She ended up being a good person. Luckily, we got lucky in that sense.
That's how trafficking gets started. Like,
Typically.
I mean, that's a totally different.
Yeah, completely different topic, but I studied it in school a bit, and so it's always different. But that's one of the
So
main
there
ways.
are people at supermarkets just waiting to pick up,
Not just supermarkets, unfortunately.
or other stores, or just around the corner gas stations that just like, how do you know?
That's a whole different topic we can get into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, I worked with this program that we had a lot of traffickers when I was working for the county, and so we could definitely talk about that too.
But back to when you guys are dropped off.
Oh yeah. We got in this lady's car and she drove us to her house, and my older sister and our little brother, my dad said he wanted to keep his son because I was his only son and it was his pride. He didn't take care of him. And my older sister, the only reason he wanted to keep my older sister was because he wanted her to take care of him.
Yeah.
So, because if he just kept the boy, he wouldn't be able to take care of him. And so, one of our neighbors, the neighbors who were always calling the cops on my dad, she called the cops on him randomly because he was playing his music too loud, and they came and investigated, and they were like, "Where's the other kids?" And my sister told him, like, he gave them away. And so she's like, "What?" And so she put both of them in one of the county cars. She's like, she asked my sister, she's like, "Hey, can you just go get an outfit for your brother from his room?" And she's like, "Okay," completely like just oblivious, not even knowing what was about to happen. And so the social worker told her to get inside of the car and put our little brother in the car, and then she started driving away. And she's like, which this is something, if you're a social worker, never do it this way. Never, ever, ever. Because this is one of the most traumatic experiences a child could possibly have. She told my sister to turn around and take one last look at our house because she was never going back. My sister didn't even know what was wrong. She had no idea what was happening. And when you're in the foster, sorry.
Yeah, I guess kids don't know what other families are like, so they think however messed up.
It's completely normal.
Yeah.
We thought it was normal. Yeah. And so I worked as a social worker too, and one of the biggest things I noticed when we had to do home removals is that most of the children, they had no idea. Like, they loved their parents and they wanted to stay no matter what their circumstances were like, no matter like if they had bruises and scratches, marks all over their arms and legs, they still wanted to stay with their parents because they love their parents. Their parents are all they know. Yeah. That's their source of first trust, and they don't know that it's wrong because how can your parents possibly be wrong? And later, of course, everyone thinks their parents are wrong, but so that social worker ended up bringing our little brother and our sister to the home where we were. They found out where we were. The reason they found out where we were was because my twin sister and was because the lady who we were staying with, she tried to enroll us for school, and she didn't have any sort of papers or documentation that she was our legal guardian. And so they just thought it was shady, and they called social services on her. And so they put us all in that same home for one night. And then the very next morning when we woke up, there were 3 different county cars in front of our house, and we all got separated. Like my twin sister and I went in one, my little brother went in another one, and then my older sister and our younger sister, they both went in a different one. And so we all just got split up. And then that's sort of what started the whole foster care experience, the journey, the moving around so many times.
So they don't give you much time at all. It's just like, hey,
No.
we're going somewhere and you're gone. And,
Yep.
usually even if you're preparing for a trip, you want to,
Yeah.
plan for a couple weeks and kind of get mentally ready. But
Yeah,
none
it's
of
not
that.
like we had anything to pack. We didn't have like clothes or toys or things to take with us. We had a blanket. We could take that, but they don't let us take the blanket. And so they just took us, and whatever we were wearing, that's what they took with us. And so, but so we moved, my siblings and I, okay, let me tell you what happened. My older sister, she got to eventually go live with my grandma. So my grandma got legal guardianship of her, so she didn't have to go to foster care.
Your mom's grand-
My mom's mom. My mom's mom, she was a lot more stable, and she had a little apartment, but she could only take in one of us. She didn't have room to take all of us, so she could only take Keisha. And then my little brother, he moved around twice, and then he got put with this foster parent who eventually adopted him, and he stayed in that one home his entire life for the next like 16, 17 years.
Oh, so he got a good one.
Oh yeah. We were all jealous of him. We're like, you have a nice home and a nice family. And then my younger sister Tashina, the one who is 4, she probably has the craziest story. I wish I could get her in here, but mentally she just would not be able to handle it. So she went through a lot of abuse. Between the time when she was 3 and 4 in my own home. And she probably had it the worst out of all of us. But so there's different levels of foster homes. There's group homes. There's different levels of group homes. There's either group homes or foster homes. With group homes, there's level 1 all the way through level 14. And level 1 is the least restrictive. Level 14 is the most restrictive. It's basically like a lockdown facility. This means these kids are so bad, like one more wrongdoing of theirs, and they get sent to juvenile hall. Like that's the next step. There is nothing else after that. They can't backtrack and go into a foster home. And so
So a group home is when you have a lot of kids and just a couple of supervisors. It's not...
Yeah, like group homes, they basically don't really have foster parents. They have a staff.
Right.
And these are children who need a lot more attention. Maybe they have mental issues and sometimes even developmental disorders that keep them from being able to just receive normal treatment.
So even a level 1 is worse.
It's pretty restrictive.
It's more restrictive than
a foster home. Mm-hmm. Now I know there are some foster homes out there that are pretty strict, so I don't mean to like minimize them by any means. But in my experience, from what I've seen, group homes, like the specific levels are just levels of restriction.
Gotcha.
But going back to my younger sister, my sister was 4, and after being through all of that abuse and all that trauma, then getting torn from her family, they didn't have room for her. They couldn't find a placement overnight for her in a foster home, so they put her in a level 14. The highest level, they put her in level 14 group home. She was only supposed to stay there for a couple of weeks until they found her another placement. She ended up staying there for 7 years.
And she was really young then. So.
Very young. She got, from staying there, she was completely institutionalized. They kept switching her on different medications. She didn't need medicine. She was traumatized. She didn't know where her family was, where her siblings were. We were all just suddenly gone. And so now, just to make a short story longer, she is 23 years old, and she is in a mental hospital, and she has to stay there till she's 62. She's like mentally and physically.
Her whole life is gone.
Mm-hmm. Her whole entire life is gone. And most of it is due to the medications and the side effects they've had on her development.
Yeah.
But also the trauma has its issues on its own. But on top of that, the institutionalization she received from being in every single home. She's moved around a ton of times. I thought I moved a lot. I moved around a total of like 29 times in my 16 years of childhood. But my sister, she moved over 50 times.
That is ridiculous.
So, yeah. So
like even a normal person would go crazy if they had to adjust that many times.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
Yeah, that's something else I want to talk about with maybe
sure.
with a psychologist or something some other time is
Mm-hmm.
have on. And like people who are medicated a lot of times, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it's not because there's something necessarily wrong with them. They just had a hard life or
Yeah.
a circumstance
They
that are
don't know how to
bad.
act.
It's not actually that they have like some chemical imbalance or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's just, it's
Mm-hmm.
like their life is messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. They had a
Yeah.
tough life.
Yeah.
And so, but going back to my own story, I know I sort of sidetracked a lot here.
Oh, you want to get your water?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you. What was that? 5, 4, 3. Just kidding.
You can put it on. You can put it here if you want.
Awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks. Okay. So when I went into the foster care system, I was 11 years old. And I was luckily able to have a twin sister. Like, this is one of the world's greatest things. Having someone who's exactly like you. We have the same likes, the same dislikes. We have the same face. I mean, and so I think just being able to have not only someone there, not only a sibling with me, but someone who's exactly the same as me. Like, having that level of support with me throughout the entire journey, I feel like that's what helped me get through it the most. I had someone there with me the whole time. I didn't have to do it alone. I know there are tons and tons and tons of kids out there who they have to do this whole entire thing by themselves.
Yeah.
Some are lucky to have a sibling, but to have a twin, it makes a huge difference because like you think and you act the same. And I know a lot of twins don't identify with each other on the same level, but we were very close, and it's probably because we went through so much together. But in the foster care system, moved a lot of times, and none of the reasons that my sister and I moved were ever because of our own fault, like our own wrongdoing. It was never because we did something wrong. A lot of times in the foster care system, children act out, and that's why they get moved. The foster parents can't handle them. But with us, it was never something we did wrong. Typical reasons why we got moved was one of the foster parents had rats. 2, our foster family, none of them spoke English. And they kept us there for 3 months. We didn't speak any Spanish and they didn't speak any English, so we didn't know how to communicate.
Why would they approve people who have rats or people who can't?
That's my question. They don't do a strict enough observation in the beginning, and they're like, hey, they have an opening. Here you go. Enjoy. Good luck with your hopes and dreams.
Wow.
But yeah. Another one, let's see.
So they're not even giving kids a good chance. It's just get out of, paperwork and
Find
just
someone who
cross
has an
somebody
opening.
off. And
Yeah. Another time we moved was because it was a shelter home. Shelter homes are very temporary. It's mainly supposed to be like the overnight type of thing. We were only supposed to stay there a maximum of 2 weeks. And we ended up staying there for 3 months. So.
And that's different from the group home thing?
It's a transitionary home. So it's like, this is the place where most children get placed while they're waiting for a foster home or a group home to open up. It's the place they go right after they leave their parents. And so I still remember that foster, I call her a foster parent, but she was one of the nicest people we ever met. And I remember, so going from my own home into this home, right after the lady who my dad gave us away to, this is where we went to first. And so, but going to this home, this was the first time I was ever able to touch the refrigerator door and open it and get something without permission. And
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. We were never when my mom and dad were both in the picture, we were never allowed to get food on our own. We would get in trouble. And so I remember we had to tell our mom every time we were finished eating when she was still home. And so after every meal, we'd go running, we're done. She's like, okay, go wash your hands or go to bed. And so at this home, I remember our very first meal, my sister and I, we both went running into the living room and we just announced to everyone, we're done eating. And the lady was like, so do you want seconds? And we're like, oh, we can have seconds. And she's like, why are you telling me that you're done? And we're like, we thought we were supposed to. And one other thing that was cool was she said that we can eat anything we want in the entire house. And we looked in her entire house, and in her garage, she had this huge 10-pound bucket full of chocolate frosting. I don't know why she had it or where it came from, but we wanted that every day. She also had this huge, gigantic chunk of chocolate, and it was just melting chocolate. But we just went at it every day. And it was that and yogurt. We just could not get enough of chocolate frosting, chocolate bar, and yogurt, like
Wow, way too much
unlimited.
sugar.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like we never had this opportunity. We're like chocolate and it's free and yeah, but she was such an amazing person. Yeah.
Was it because she had a lot of kids come through that she knew what they wanted, or just kind of
You know,
gets
to
always
this
stocked
day,
up on
I
the
still don't
goodies?
know why she had it, and it's funny because I just found her on Facebook, and
Oh,
I
no
added her
way.
on Facebook a few months ago, and she told me, she's like, I remember you, girl. She's like, you're the ones who all you wanted was that chocolate frosting and that giant melting piece of chocolate I had in my garage. But to this day, I still don't know why she had it. Like, who just randomly has a 10-pound bucket of chocolate in their garage? But I don't know. I don't know what it was for, but maybe she got it somewhere, like a deal.
Or maybe for dunking, misbehaving
Yeah.
kids.
I would misbehave all the time. Is it my turn to be on punishment yet? But yeah, so oh, and also she had this huge trampoline in her backyard. This was the only fun home that I got to go to. And so I was happy, more than happy to stay there for 3 months. I wanted to stay there forever.
Yeah, it
Um
sounds good.
yeah, that one was really good. And then after this home, my twin sister and I, we actually got put into our dad's mom's home, our biological grandma. Oh my gosh, that was. I have a pretty good idea of why my dad turned out the way he did. Because, yeah, that was. I don't even
Yeah.
know what details to go into, but let's just say it was not a good home.
And the
Um,
court system thought it was okay for you guys to go. They
yeah,
vetted
for a
her.
while, which is funny because if they would have actually looked at their records, they would have seen that she had she had a record of like she tried to kidnap us when we were babies, and there were helicopters going around her house. And
How did you get out of there then?
I don't know, I was one. So
No, I mean, when you guys were put back in with her.
oh my gosh. So I'm just like thinking
Oh,
about like the different experiences she put us through. Just to give you an idea of some of what we went through. She took all of our clothes and she ripped them up in front of us, like all of everything we had, all that our shelter home parent had bought us. She ripped them up in front of us. She got this donation bag she like stole it from Salvation Army, and she made us wear those clothes to school. And we got teased, we got bullied, and they were like old people clothes. They weren't even our size. She made us wear that to school, and so we got teased. She didn't feed us, like we got starved. Like she would always say, like, you have to eat breakfast and lunch at school, and then dinner she would give us, like, she would mix all of the food together. She's like, it's all going the same way anyway. She's just disturbed. And
that's kind of true, though. Once you
true.
chew it, it's all the
Yeah,
same.
but it's so much more pleasurable if it's separated, if
Yeah.
it's together and just this giant glob of conglomerate food. It's not appealing. But I guess a starving child would eat it, so we did eat it, but it was just, yeah, it was disturbing. On top of that, there's so much more I can get into, but let me tell you, the way we got out of here was out of that particular home was we had this counselor come into our class one day at school, and he just came and spoke to our class. I think I was in like 7th grade, and I just remember him saying, if any of you are going through anything at home, if anyone's hurting you, if anyone's mistreating you, you can come to me and you can talk to me about it and I'll help you. And I was like, I wonder if I can tell him like what my grandma's doing. And so I raised my hand and I was like, can I come talk to you? He's like, yeah. So I brought me in this little office and he's like, what's going on? Is everything okay? And I told him what my grandma was doing. And that same day, social services was at our house. And they're like, pack up a bag. And they were like detaining my grandma on the other side of our house.
Oh, man.
And so they told us to pack up a bag and they moved us. And so they moved us into another foster home. And so, but I'm going to skip ahead a few years just for sake of time. I don't know how much time you have, but.
No, well, whatever you're comfortable talking about,
Sure.
it's cool.
Okay. The way my twin sister and I got into modeling is because as twins, everyone used to always say, like, you two should be in the Double Mint Gum commercials because we used to love dressing alike. And okay, after we left our grandma's house, when we went into the regular foster home, they actually did buy us clothes and we were able to look nice, and the bullying dropped. We switched schools, and so it wasn't an issue for us anymore. And so it was always like one of the good things about moving is it was always a new start. Was every time we moved, we always had a fresh new start. We had new friends, we got to meet new people, we had a new family, but it was also sort of the downside of having new friends, having to make friends each time, having to get to know a new family, having to call someone else Mr. or Mrs. or mom and dad, and so that was the tough part. But when we were growing up, we used to always want to do we used to watch the double mint gum commercials.
I don't
and
think people even know what that is anymore.
Oh my gosh! Okay,
I don't think there are double mint gums anymore.
Double your
but
pleasure, double
yeah.
your form statement of the greatness of double mint gum.
Hey.
You're like, oh, what? Okay, so double mint gum commercials are.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think they're still around. Otherwise, they can be the sponsor for this podcast.
No, oh my goodness, get back on the air. It's because we weren't around. Just kidding. Well, anyways, they used to have commercials on TV about this gum that was called Double Mint. It's in a little 5-pack, 25 cents. And they generally had twins on those commercials.
Yeah.
And so every time people saw us as twins, they're like, hey, you two should do those commercials. Because we were always happy. We always had each other. We were just hyper. And so they used to always say, we should do them. And we're like, we want to. And so I remember when I was maybe 13 years old, I called the company, and I was like, my twin sister and I want to do a double mint gum commercial. What do we need to do? And they're like, where's your parent? And we're like, I got to go now. And so we could never figure out a way to get on the commercials. And then we got moved into this other foster home that was a part of a foster family agency. And they told us we couldn't have our picture anywhere because we were telling the social worker, we want to do commercials, we want to do modeling. And they told us that we not only couldn't get into commercials or modeling, we couldn't have our picture taken. We couldn't be in the school yearbook. We couldn't take school photos. And we're like, why? And they said, because we now belong to the state. We were an entity of the state. We weren't allowed to have our picture advertised. We weren't allowed to advertise ourselves, not even in the yearbook. And they said, because doing so could allow a way for our parents to find us or for other people to find us. We never knew what they meant by other people, but they didn't want anyone to find us. And so we didn't think that was fair. We're like, just because we're foster kids, it doesn't mean we should not be able to have the same things and do the same things as other normal kids. We're doing everything normal.
Yeah,
our circumstances shouldn't decide what we get to do. And so
yeah, Leah actually wouldn't let me film or take pictures with some of the kids that I spoke with.
Mm-hmm.
So
because we weren't allowed to be, we're not
yeah,
allowed
but
to be
she didn't
published.
exactly explain why. That's interesting.
Most likely that's one of the
just
reasons.
for safety.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so, okay, when you're in the foster care system, generally every 6 months you have to go to this thing at court called a review hearing. And a review hearing is basically where the judge and the children's attorney and your social worker decide what's going to happen with you for the next 6 months, where the children are going to be placed, what's going to happen with their parents, and basically figure out a 6-month plan. And so we went to this type of review hearing every 6 months. We're used to it. But when we were placed in the foster family agency, I remember my twin sister and I were like, wait, we have our own attorney because it's a children's attorney, at the review hearing. And we're like, and we're going to court and there's going to be a judge there. Let's make our own case. And so we completely wrote out this entire thing that we wanted to talk to the judge about. We wanted specifically to go into court, not to talk about the next 6 months of our family circumstances or what's going to happen with us, but we wanted to make something happen for us. We wanted to get in front of the judge and argue why we should be allowed to model and be in commercials. So we basically wrote out this whole entire not deposition, litigation, I think that's what you call it. And so
but can you do that? Will your you need your lawyer to go along with it, right?
Stay tuned and you'll find out. So when we went to the court the next day, our children's attorney came and sat with us and talked to us, said, here's what's going to happen. You can either go in the children's room and play games and color, or you can come and just sit in the adult room with us in the courtroom. And we're like, oh, we want to go in the court. And he's like, oh, you do? And we're like, yeah, we want to talk to the judge. He's like, no one's allowed to talk to the judge. And we're like, we just want to ask a few questions. And he's like, okay, what do you want to ask? And we're like, we just want to talk to the judge. And he's like, okay, I'll see if they'll allow it. And so we went inside of when they called our case, we came in and the judge was just mumbling this whatever. I don't know. It's jargon. We didn't understand it. But we just raised our hands and the judge was like, no. What? She was like, do you have a question? And we're like, yeah. And she's like, okay. And And so like we just stood up and we're like, we don't think it's fair that just because we're foster kids, we can't have our picture anywhere. And she's like, what do you mean? And we're like, well, we got told we can't have our picture in the school yearbook, and we can't have our picture at school. We can't have our picture taken. We can't even go to our friend's house without their entire family being life scanned and fingerprinted and background checked.
Wow,
We
so
wanna-
crazy.
Oh yeah, it's very, very restrictive. And so we're like, we really want to do modeling and we want to be in commercials, but we can't because we're foster kids and we don't like that. Like we're still doing everything other normal kids do. Like we still go to school, we're still doing good. And why can't we do commercials? And she's like, oh, and she's like, no one's ever actually stood up for that before. And we're like, well, can we? And she's like, I'll tell you what. She's like, if you two can keep your GPA above a 3.5, then I will allow you as foster kids to get into modeling and do commercials. And not only that, because her son was an actual modeling agent. She's
Oh,
like,
how
I will even
interesting.
give you an agent to work with. And we're like, our GPAs are 3.6. She's like, okay, then, well, you can do it. And like, we had no idea this is how it worked or that this would work, but it worked. Like she provided us an agent to work with. Not only that, the court paid for us to go to modeling classes.
No way.
Yeah.
Why did they do that?
I have no idea. But I'm extremely grateful for it because like, I don't know. And I mean,
Was
it was
it
her
just-
promise. And
Was it just something that the judge could decide as part
I
of
think so.
a program or something?
yeah, either that or else the judge probably personally paid for it. But for whatever reason, the court wrote us a check for the amount of the modeling classes and they covered it for us.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I've never met a judge that was like that. And that judge retired a while back, but I still remember her name and what she was like. And not only that, like the next time we came to court, we argued a case that we wanted our very own laptops so that we can do better in school. And which is funny because we were like 15 years old and like 15 years old, like no one even had laptops unless you were either an adult or else you worked for some major corporation. Like laptops are kind of like non-existent, but we argued in court. We made another little another little statement saying why we should have laptops.
To the same judge?
The same exact judge, yeah. And she ended up getting us laptops. And our foster parents were upset. They're like, you can't use that unless you're going to school. And because but the school wouldn't let us take them with us. They
Yeah.
had to hold on to them. And so our social worker had to tell our foster parents it was okay for you to use it at their home, but they were just jealous. But it was just funny because we just came home, we're like, she got us a laptop. And
Hey, you never know unless you ask or
yeah,
unless you try, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's sort of part of my message. Like, no one ever thinks they can just get up and do these things. Like, take some initiative. Like, just taking the initiative, like just saying, hey, it's a judge, we have an attorney, let's do a court case. Like, that got us, that started my entire modeling career.
I had no idea, but like I never heard this part of the story, but
Oh, I thought I told you.
no.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna say? Yeah, like the worst that could have happened is
You could have said no.
yeah, and you'd be back where you started.
Mhm.
Big deal.
Yep. And if that would have happened, I would have found another way.
Yeah.
Because I'm feisty like that. Like, if something doesn't work, I will find another way until it does.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
And so that's what started my twin sister and my modeling career.
So you
Just
guys
that's
got
what sparked
into
it.
some modeling gigs.
Yep. So from there, the court paid for all of our modeling classes that we wanted to go to. And then after the modeling classes, we started doing little fashion shows for local stores, like clothing stores. And then we started doing it for like the college that was nearby, like RCC or something like that. And then during that time, we still moved foster homes, but it was like, none of the reasons were things that we did wrong. It was just circumstantial.
Mhm.
And when we moved into one of our last foster homes, like we didn't have anyone to take us because we wanted to go do auditions and go to different castings, but we didn't have anyone who wanted to drive us all the way to Los Angeles because Riverside is like it could be 1 to 3 hours depending on traffic to get to Los Angeles. And so when we went into our very last foster home, at first our foster parents were taking us, but then they're like, should I just tell you no now so that you don't have the expectation that I'm going to take you each time? And she's like, if you want to go, like, you're going to have to find your own ride there. And so we went online and we hired our own personal driver.
Because you guys are making money from the modeling gig, so you had money to.
No, actually, we were both working at Cold Stone. We got jobs when we were early.
Oh, nice.
When we were younger at an early age. And so, yeah. And also we worked at Round Table Pizza for a couple of years and we saved from that too. And so every time we would hire this one lady and she was part of a modeling management, so she's kind of like a mother agent for a bunch of smaller agencies. But she just had so much like faith in us. She's like, those twins are gonna get far. And so she would come and pick us up, and we'd pay her like $20-$40 to drive us to LA and back.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
this
So
was
you
our
had the same person.
Yeah,
So
it
you
was
got
always
to
the same
know
person.
and become part of your team.
Yeah. And it was kind of like so Uber, we started that before you.
Yeah, how nice would it have been if you had Uber and other things back then,
Yes,
right?
that would have been so much more convenient. Just an
Yeah, kids have
app.
it so easy now.
Yes. And they still complain. Anyways, so we did a lot of commercials and things together, a lot of different photo shoots together, but then my sister decided she wanted to do this national student exchange program, so she went off to Utah and I stayed in California. And the hard part was that when she left, we had just like started our own name for ourselves. Like we were the twins with the Z at the end, and no one wanted just Karri or just Corey. They wanted us together. And I remember I would get these casting calls, but they were all for twins, and my sister was out of the state. And so I was like, my sister would be willing to do it too, but do you guys mind flying her out here? And they're like, you're not together. And I'm like, no. They're like, no, that's okay. Never mind. And so I lost out on a ton of gigs because she wasn't here or because I wasn't out there. And so I had to start from scratch basically and just like start and rebuild a name for myself. And so
It's like the
Like-
band breaking up.
yes, literally. Yeah. Just like JT. He started his own name. But I basically redid headshots, redid a lot of different photo shoots. I built my own portfolio, and my sister ended up getting married and then having a kid, so she sort of just backed away from the modeling and commercial industry like altogether. And
Yeah.
I sort of stuck with it. And I've had some downfalls, ups and downs, and I'm still doing it. And I've had the opportunity of getting a lot of gigs. I've had the opportunity of being able to speak to a lot of different like, nonprofit organizations and foster agencies in the county and just at different events and just sort of explain my story. And I know there's a lot of details that I left out of the story, a lot of very traumatic experiences and situations that I went through that I did not share. I try to like, when I share my story, I don't want to re-traumatize any children that may have gone through those situations or those circumstances, and hearing my story would make it worse for them. I don't want to do that. That's not my goal by any means. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about it that way. I would just think it would be hard for you to think through it and talk about it, because I know that's definitely the case for me. But that's true. I guess there's certain things just it's better
It
not
triggers.
to not to think too much about. And if you're watching something or listening to something like this,
Could bring up a lot of bad memories.
yeah,
And so, especially knowing what the audience can be too. And so,
yeah. But you kind of downplayed like the kind of things you've done modeling. You've done some really cool things, including when you
I'm
told me
humble, I'm
that
humble. Just kidding.
that you did the IMTA International Model
Yeah.
and Talent Agency, or wait, Association.
Yeah.
A stands for association.
Mhm.
Because I got to judge that 1 year totally out of like I had no idea what I was doing, and it wasn't for modeling part because they do a lot of acting and talent
Mhm.
stuff. But I just only when I got there did I realize what a big stage that was, and for
Mhm.
you to have done very well there for
Twice.
right,
Yeah.
twice. There you
I
go.
won twice.
Yeah, because I was just looking it up again yesterday, and they've had a lot of big stars like Ashton Kutcher and some other big movie stars. Who else? Katie Holmes, I think, came from there too, or at least worked with them for a while. So they're kind of amongst the stars.
So my goal was never to be a professional model or a supermodel. And this may be what part of the reason why I downsize a lot of or minimize a lot of what I've done. The reason I post pictures and the reason I share my story was never so that people will see me as a model. My goal is so that is specifically because I want people to see me as a role model.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, yeah, sometimes I won't talk about certain events or gigs that I've done. I will just let it be up there. And one of my hopes when I was younger was that one day my parents would see me on some commercial or open up some magazine and they'd be like, "Whoa, that's my kid!" Like, what? and maybe then they'd be proud or see like, oh, maybe I should have stuck around, or maybe I could have, if I would have stuck around, I would have been able to take credit for them doing so well. But
I think a lot of kids who are aspiring to do something great kind of has that, and but I think it's more important for you to just do it for yourself, and or for the causes that you feel like you can inspire other people, not for any validation.
yeah, my reasoning for wanting to get into it has long since changed. I don't need validation anymore. I feel like I've touched so many people's lives, and I've had such an amazing opportunity of just being able to share the story and get it out to so many people. So many lives have changed from it, and so
Yeah,
that is my validation.
yeah, and I guess a lot of people don't really know the modeling industry is very tough too. People
Oh
don't
yeah.
understand it's not something anybody can do, and
Hmm.
just the lifestyle, and getting up early for
Hmm.
early calls, or you know a whole day trying to look good and look
Hmm.
positive when you're tired and aching and different
Yep.
things like that.
That's another thing on its own, the modeling industry. So it is something that not everyone can do. And I fall in that category of not everyone. I've had so many issues that they've complained about. For one, I have an allergy to coffee. So whenever I'm around coffee too long, or if I accidentally consume it, my arms will break out like crazy. And I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I have all these scars on my arms from that are old from like coffee breakouts, and they stay forever. They do not go away easily. And um, I don't I don't know how to get rid of them. And a lot of times I just keep them there as something that will keep me humble, but that's just one of the issues I faced in the modeling industry. A lot of people see it, and it's not something I can control, but people see it and they're like, "Oh, what is that? We don't want that on camera. It's going to be way too much post-production work." And especially for fashion shows, which is my aspiration. That's what I want to do the most of, is runway. But runway shows are live and people see you live, so there's not much editing you can do.
Right.
And so that's been a huge struggle for me, just being able to still get the gigs while having like these breakouts, these scars all over my arms. And not only that, I've never had clear skin from the time I was 14 until just like last year. And so now I use like this new face like lotion that I put on every night, and my skin has cleared up a lot, but I still have little scars on my face. You can see them. I don't know if you can see on the camera. But
Is this
so
something you can just get anywhere, or is it like a
online.
special?
Online. I'm so like grateful for all of our online resources that we have. Technology. I didn't have technology when I was younger and for starting. Like,
And is it natural?
yeah, it's called Curology. And I promise I'm not doing an advertisement for them, but it has made a huge difference to my skin. Like, I can show you before and after pictures, and you wouldn't recognize me. I had like, people didn't look at me; they looked at my scars, my face, my
Yeah, now that you
breakouts.
mention it, I didn't realize it earlier today, but you do look much better than when I first met you.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. A lot has changed. And so, on top of that, they always, like in the industry, people always refer to me as the bigger model. And I remember I remember this one time, this guy called me, this casting director, and he's like, "You are 5'10" and you weigh 130 pounds." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was excited about it. And he's like, "Are you muscular?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, why? Why do you weigh 130 pounds? I was like, "That's just my normal weight." And he's like, "If you want this gig, I need you to get down to a size 0. I'm going to give you 2 months to get down to," he told me he wanted me to get down to about 115, 120. And he's like, "If not, you don't get the gig." And I was
Yeah,
like,
some
that's,
of those are super ridiculous,
yeah,
those
yeah.
requirements.
Yeah,
But
and I was already thin. Like, I didn't have like fat on my bones then. I was like a stick. And I feel like I have heavy bones, but that's probably everyone's excuse, right?
yeah, some people
I'm
do.
just
I
kidding.
think some people do.
Yeah, I think, and even like, okay, for someone who's 5'10", your normal weight range should be like the healthy range would be between 150 and 160. So for me to be 130, I was already 20 pounds underweight, and he wanted me to drop down even more than that. So what I did was I declined the gig. So, which I've had to do that a lot, and unfortunately, it hasn't just been me declining the gigs. It's mostly been me not getting the gigs, and most of it has been due to size. Which I'm already small. I'm like pretty like on the
Yeah.
small to average size. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
it's been a
pretty
struggle.
small. But what's your opinion on just the whole industry requirement of looking size 0 or -1.
I think it's very -1.
Yeah, people who are
Yeah, did you
like
know there's a
paper
size
thin.
000? There's size 0 and then there's size
Oh, is
00.
that -1?
Yeah,
It's actually
basically.
00.
Yeah. Yeah. So my opinion is I think it's very unrealistic and I think it's very harsh. And I think it gives like just women out there unrealistic goals. Like it causes people to compare, compete, and complain. Like the 3 C's.
Yeah.
They just destroy people and people swear they're happy, but like you can't enjoy yourself. It's so unrealistic. And maybe some people are small, maybe because of their upbringing, maybe because of their genetics. But for people to have to, like, for the industry to force people to like basically base their, whether or not they get the job, to base their future careers off size, I think it's very unrealistic and I think it's not fair. I think our world and our industry should be embracing natural shapes a lot more and embracing natural features. Like if someone has scars on their arms, like advertise that. It's a normal person.
Right. And I
and
feel like that's happening more and more now,
yeah,
the
I
different-
think the industry is getting a lot more lenient in some cases, but I feel like overall it hasn't changed much.
Yeah, and
It could be a lot farther than we should be.
yeah, with the body shapes, I have a story to tell you after we get off the
Yeah.
podcast about why they prefer size 00.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what I've heard is because the material, the clothing is a lot cheaper to make because they use less of it. So they don't fit the clothing to the model. They pick models that will fit that clothing and that actual outfit that they make.
No,
That's what I've heard.
no, I think that might be part of it, but I think if you're making clothes that just looks good on people who are size 0 or mannequin, it's not going to actually look good on anybody that buys it. And you can see that when you're walking around in the mall and people wearing things that aren't, 5'9.5" and size 00. It's not going to fit their proportions correctly. And I feel like designers should actually make clothes that make normal women look.
Yeah, like if you think about it, how many of the outfits that you see on the runway today do you actually see people wearing in public?
Well, yeah, so that's my story. I'll tell. I heard about it when I was, I think, at Milan or Paris Fashion Week. One of the designers kind of told me why they do it, or at least that she knows of. So I'll keep that off the air for now.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think I've kept you here long enough. Unless you have other stories you want to share. I want to have you on again, and
Sure.
especially with what we had a couple of things that I found interesting, like the psychology of being torn apart and trafficking and being, but that's, you learned about that through some of your social work, and that's
And
separate
seeing
from
it
your
on my family too.
right. But
Yeah.
that's separate from your personal experience.
I could talk about some personal experiences as well. Like
Okay.
I don't mind sharing that on the air. We'll just give the audience a caution, a warning in advance.
Yeah. So
That way they're mentally prepared for it, if anything.
okay, so let's do that next time, because
Okay.
I've heard of other just disturbing things about how kids are just lost and just end up, who knows where with who knows. Yeah. And it'll be good to shine a light about, how even regular people can just kind of watch for this happening, or,
Yeah.
so.
And it would be fun to share like a bunch of the experiences of being a twin. That would be fun on its own.
Oh yeah, I wonder if we could get your twin here next time too.
Oh, that would be fun.
But
We'll talk about how many times we've switched classes, we switched names, we've tricked so many people. She actually sued me on national television for breaking a contract we made when we were younger, that we would never take any pictures without each other.
but she was the one that
Mystery.
left.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but
But
it was like the Hollywood Judge. It was just one of those TV shows. Like
yeah,
that.
those are fake, right?
They are, yeah.
I just learned about that because I saw a friend put that on her acting reel. I was like,
Yeah, they're totally fake, but they wanted a story they could do with twins. So like, hey, those two are twins. Like, let's get them to do a story about, let's say when she was younger, she wrote a contract when she was 6. She wrote a contract saying she would never do any modeling gigs. And, I didn't start modeling till I was 14, so
Yeah.
obviously it's not true. But she got to sue me on national television for breaking my contract that I wrote before I could write, that I wouldn't do anything without her. And so
was that with Judge Judy or one
no,
of
that
those
was
shows, or is it
Judge
a different?
Matheson.
Huh? I'll know
Yeah.
that one.
It's just funny because my sister's husband's last name is Matheson.
Huh.
But, well, my sister's last name is not Matheson because she's married, but yeah, not related by any means.
But that was that just one of the modeling gigs that
Yeah,
you
that was
got
just one
hired
of our
for,
gigs.
acting
Yeah.
gigs?
It was so much fun though. That one was. And then it was funny because the next episode, which we got to hang out with them backstage, was Elmo was suing Darth Vader for something. And we don't know what it was for, but they were both on stage to go next.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that legit? Or was it people with masks on?
It was people with costumes. But it was just pretty entertaining, which is the purpose. So they succeeded.
I
Yeah.
felt so betrayed when I found out that those shows aren't real. I thought they were just. I was imagining if I ever had to go to court, that would just kind of be what it's like. But I guess it's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're fake.
But
It's a good thing though, because some of the situations are pretty. I mean, Elmo is not real.
Elmo's my favorite.
Yeah, his goldfish is my favorite.
All right. So if people want to follow you and kind of stay up to date on your different modeling and speaking events, kind of where can they find you online?
They can find me Instagram. It's Kali, and then my first name Karri, Karri, and then cutie, but spelled with a K, Kutie 333. So it's Karri cutie 333.
All right, I'll put that on the screen.
Awesome, thanks.
All right, thanks for finally making this happen.
Yeah.
Been trying to plan this for a while.
I know the last time you invited me, I had a fashion show that same day that I just got cast for. They're like, hey, we need you here in an hour. And I'm like,
That's kind of what
okay.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So it was, I can imagine it was hard for you guys to get to all the gigs and without parents that would be willing to drive you, because other kids probably had super dedicated parents.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, we didn't have that support.
I know, like, I guess they're not models, but I know some dancers that moved out, like their whole family moved out just to support their career since they were like 5. It's something ridiculous. Like, I don't even understand how their parents can support them and just like
and dedicate that much
up and
time
move and pay for everything.
Yeah.
But
I did everything on my own, and as soon as I turned 18, I got a car and started driving myself there. I was like, nope, I'm not gonna depend on anyone. Because when you depend on other people, it's like you start, I don't know, if they become unreliable or something happens, they're not able to take you or do something for you, you just get almost bitter, and then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they were like helping me, like they were giving me a service. Why would I get mad? But like, so I would rather just do everything on my own, just find a way for me to do it. That way I don't have to depend on anyone. I won't end up with any disappointments, because I've had so many disappointments growing up. Like, who has time for another one? Like,
Yeah.
I'll just make it and do it my own way.
yeah,
So,
I can feel you have similar experiences.
yeah.
All right, let's wrap it there.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.